You're ready. He's ready. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. I know Dr. Patel is on his way. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Palm Beach Gardens Medical Center. I'm Teresa Urquhart. I'm the CEO for the hospital. And Palm Beach Gardens Medical Center is a comprehensive cardiac heart center. And we were the first hospital in Palm Beach County to perform open heart surgery over 50 years ago. So today is an extraordinary day to celebrate and reunite the individuals who helped land the plane after pilot Ken Allen suffered a medical emergency in the air, and the doctors who then saved Mr. Allen's life once he was on the ground. It's no surprise that this story has gained national and international attention, and it's a testament to each individual up here that we're sharing this miracle story and not grieving a tragedy. So I want to take a moment to introduce some folks here that we have in the audience with us. These gentlemen over here, this is Palm Beach Fire Rescue. They are Station 81 C Shift, and they were the first people on the scene at Palm Beach International Airport and the first treatment team for Mr. Allen. So these guys got it all going. So we appreciate you and all the work that you do. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge those that are not in the room with us today, including the entire air traffic control team, our entire team here at Palm Beach Gardens Medical Center, including from our emergency room, our operating room, our critical care, cardiopulmonary, cardiac rehab, and everybody in between. It takes a team to make things happen. We strive to provide high-quality care for all of our patients, and our team ensued. We did just that for Mr. Allen. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone up here at the table with us today. First, we have Mr. Ken Allen, is the pilot of the plane who was first treated at St. Mary's Medical Center and then transferred here to Palm Beach Gardens Medical Center, both part of the Palm Beach Health Network. Russ Frank is a friend of Mr. Allen and a passenger on the plane. Robert Morgan is an air traffic controller at Palm Beach International Airport who helped passenger Darren Harrison land the plane. And Dr. Kyle Garagopoulos is an ER physician who treated Mr. Allen at St. Mary's Medical Center and called Mr. Allen's wife. And Dr. Patel, he's on his way here, he performed emergency surgery here at Palm Beach Gardens to save Mr. Allen's life. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to ask each individual to step up to the podium. We're starting with Mr. Allen and to tell their story. And we would like for each person to come up and tell your story. Once they have completed, then we'll take questions at the end. So we're going to start with Mr. Allen.
Good morning. When I say I'm glad to be here, I'm really glad to be here. So I've got a little thing I want to read, and if you don't think God was with us that day, then just listen to some of this stuff and you'll hopefully understand. So Dr. Patel and I had a meeting that Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon, but neither one of us knew that we were going to meet each other when we woke up that morning. So I'm cruising along back to Fort Pierce, about 12,000 feet, a few minutes before noon, descending to around 10,000, probably 60 miles offshore. And that's when God said, I've got a plan, and his plan was put into motion. And he kept his hands guiding everyone through the flight and successful landing. So I remember telling Russ and Darren that I didn't feel well. My head was pounding, and I was seeing some little blue lights shining through or sparkling through here. And they asked me, what does that mean? I said, I don't know, I got a really bad headache. And then I remember him poking me on the side of my arm saying, stay with me, stay with me. Well, then that was it. Can't really recall anything until my guys over here were pulling me out of the airplane. So just to know that God had a plan, I just made that same trip on Thursday going over. But I didn't have any passengers with me on the way back, so if this would have happened on the way back, the autopilot would have taken me way out to the Gulf of Mexico, and they'd have found me in the Gulf of Mexico somewhere after we ran out of fuel. So nothing I could have done about that. What happened if it? What would have happened if this event occurred on the way over to Marsh Harbor that morning? Chances of finding good quality care in the Bahamas are probably nil, and the time that it would have taken me to get life flighted out probably wouldn't have been a good outcome as well. Come on up, Dr. Patel. What if we had been closer to Fort Pierce? The decision to land at Fort Pierce could have been a life or death situation as well. But being so far out at sea, it just seemed to work out better for us to go south. And I'm not sure the reasons why, but that was fate. So turning south was a God's hand, just turning the airplane headed to see him. For Darren and Russ to remain calm during this unbelievable, stressful situation, I can't understand that. There's just no doubt God was with them, guiding them every step of the way. For Robert to be working that day, I understand you were not even scheduled to work.
Correct.
So, and him being the only flight instructor in the tower or in the center that approach that day.
Yeah.
I mean, that was fate for you to be there and available. And also, I understand there was some portable radio that played a part in this because Darren didn't know how to change frequencies on the airplane. So you pulled out an old portable radio that allowed you to continue to talk to him.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. That was amazing. The decision to land at Palm Beach instead of Boca Raton proved advantageous from basically a distance to the hospital and a much safer runway to land in. Once we landed, I recall waking up a little bit, but I was still confused, and I was thinking someone was trying to pull me out of the plane or throw me out of the plane. I remember telling them I just needed to get back to the front seat. I now know it was these guys trying to get me out of the plane. I had a death grip on the door, I think. So I didn't want to get out of that plane. Once we landed, let's see. Once we landed and got in the ambulance, they arrived at St. Mary's. I remember speaking with several people, you, and through the mask and just the fogginess of it. I remember you telling me that, well, you didn't have a stroke, but it's much worse. So I think I said, well, can you give my wife the good news or something like that? So I appreciate you calling and letting us FaceTime for a minute. Let's see. I remember arriving at Palm Beach where Dr. Patel greeted me and explained that we were headed to surgery and that he was going to do everything he could to fix my problem. So apparently he did because I'm here. And I really appreciate it. A lot of thank yous have to go out. I've had obviously all my close family, distant family, close friends, distant friends, people that I'm a flight instructor as well, so I've instructed people from all over the world, and it's funny to get, messages from people all over, from your former students and people that I don't even know. So I want to thank everyone for giving me those kind of prayers and wishes because it definitely helped, for sure. Thanks to my wife for taking care of me this week. Dr. Patel, I don't know what to say. You're my hero. Darren and Russ, I don't know how you did it, buddy.
You had to.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Robert, I appreciate everything you did as well.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Very good job. EMS guys, you guys are great, getting me started on that journey. The ICU staff here is amazing. The only complaint is I'm trying to sleep and they're waking me up asking me how I'm trying to sleep. So that's the only problem. Because you will get no rest in the hospital. I guarantee that. I just want to thank everybody. and I'm very happy to be here. So thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Russ Frank, and I'm nationally known as the other passenger, which I am very happy to be. Happy to be here today and happy to be anywhere, to be frank. I want to first and foremost thank God for also being a passenger on our flight from the Bahamas on May 10th. I'm reminded of my favorite psalm and verse 4, which, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And that's pretty much, I've talked to Darren a couple times, and that's pretty much the calmness that we felt was from that experience. I also, of course, want to thank Darren Harrison, who I had met not even an hour before the problem. And Darren was cool, calm, control, along with Rob. Rob's life-saving instructions on the ground gave us, I think, a better than average chance of landing that plane. Ken and Donna, my wife Babs.
Can I interrupt you one second? Could you guys not touch the podium and start the, yeah, because it's
Okay.
making noise. Thank you.
Sorry. Kenneth Donna and my wife Babs have been very close friends for about 30 years. And that day, May 10th, I was really just along for the ride. What a ride. I'm not going to go into the moment-to-moment sequence of events that I recall, and I feel like Darren has really hit that pretty well. He's covered that in his interviews. He's the real hero, and I only hope that I was enough of a co-pilot to have helped him do what he needed to do. Thanks so much to Dr. Patel and his team for making it a good day for all. I remember telling him that Ken's 50-50 odds were probably way better than us landing that plane at Palm Beach. And I also remember telling Dr. Patel that it won't be a good day unless you fix him. And he did. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert Morgan. I was the air traffic controller that helped these guys. Thank you for inviting me today. And I just want to say it's very nice to meet you guys in person, just to kind of get some closure. And when that event happened, I felt very emotional that I could help them. And just like a big weight came off my shoulders. And just to see you guys in person, it just brings even more emotion. But there's a lot of people that played a big role in this event. Fort Pierce Tower was the first people to make contact with Darren, and the controller that works there couldn't be here today because he's in California, but he said he would really like to meet you someday. And just to wish you guys the best. But they played a huge part in making this successful before I ever talked to the plane. And like everybody says with the story, I was just on break when they called me in, and I was kind of the last part of the puzzle to get them down safely. And by you, Russ, staying calm and helping Darren and kind of working together as a team, that probably played a huge role. And I'm actually a calm person too, and Darren was really calm, a little nervous, but everybody worked together as a team. And EMS, thank you guys. I never get to meet you guys. I don't know if you're based right there in the airport. Okay, you are. So I always look at your building, but I never see you.
It's a good thing.
But we had great weather that day, besides the winds, heck of a crosswind. But it feels really good to be invited to see everybody, meet the doctor. Good job, Mr. Patel. And I just want to thank everybody for all your hard work, and I'm glad we had a successful outcome. I was just doing my job. I would have, done anything I could to make a successful outcome. And it feels good to help somebody, and this is all like over the top for me. I never expected any of this. I just thought we'd kind of go back to everyday working, and it's really blown up to be a good story. So great job. Thanks for still being with us.
Happy New Year.
And thank you.
Hey everybody, my name's Kyle Gerakopoulos. I'm an emergency room doctor at St. Mary's and the first physician to see Mr. Allen. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to the EMS crew and acknowledge them for recognizing that, Mr. Allen was critically ill and exhibiting signs of stroke with, his eye deviation and motor weakness, and bringing him to us for further evaluation. During our stroke protocol, we performed CAT scans of the head and the neck, and that's where we determined that he was actually suffering from an aortic dissection. We were able to extend the CAT scans all the way through and see the full extent. As soon as we knew, I called Dr. Patel right away on the phone, and I was like, we need you. How can we get him over there as soon as possible? So I really feel like there were no delays or anything to get him over there, over here, and for surgery. And I just feel like, as you were saying, we're just doing our job. You never really know what's going to come in. And we didn't really know the full extent of the story either. Originally they told us that a co-pilot had landed the plane, so we were like, okay, well that's amazing, but he's a co-pilot. So once we found the whole story, we were like, wow, this is incredible. And just to hear how successful his surgery went, thanks to Dr. Patel, that's incredible. And when we were in the ER, as an ER doctor, sometimes you just have to be a little blunt. I told Mr. Allen, I said, you're not having a stroke, you're actually having an aortic dissection, and it's so much worse. And I'm sorry, but this is what we're going to do. This is the plan. And I wasn't sure that he was going to be able to see his wife ever again. So, I put her on FaceTime so they could see each other, and thank God that wasn't the last time that you guys have seen each other. Again, I'm just so happy and thankful for our team of nurses and, CT techs and EMS and everyone who works together, because I feel like, we all played a critical part in, the success of Mr. Allen's case. And without them, I don't know that it would be as successful, so just so thankful.
Good morning. My name's Nishant Patel. I'm the heart surgeon involved in the care. So, I discussed this a few days ago, but surgery really is a team sport, especially when you have very challenging, very long operations. These cases really require everybody to be at their A game. That's anesthesia, that's your OR staff, the assistants, the folks that run the heart-lung machine, which allows us to do these kinds of cases. And then, of course, the postoperative care. And that's just at this hospital. So what's remarkable about Ken's story is that it took teamwork everywhere. It took teamwork on the plane and in air traffic control. It took teamwork with our EMS team, teamwork at St. Mary's to get him packaged up and sent over to us. And so, it really is a testament to, the old days of surgery where you ask a heart surgeon, who the best 3 heart surgeons are in the world, and he or she won't be able to name the other 2. Those days are in the past. It really does require a complement of people in all phases of care to get somebody like Ken through what can be a very catastrophic condition. In terms of heroism and that kind of stuff, I agree with everybody up here. To me, doing our job that we're trained to do is really not heroic. I think the folks in the story that were met with unforeseen, circumstances that they were not prepared for and were forced to act in a way that they were not trained, to do. That's really heroic. To land a plane, with the assistance of, folks in the tower, to get to the plane as fast as possible and safely remove a passenger. You have no idea what's going on with him. To get him out of that plane safely, get him over to St. Mary's, and where the ER docs are faced with a myriad of different possible diagnoses, and for them to make, the most critical diagnosis of any heart condition, astutely, quickly, call me right away, get the patient over here. We ran the numbers through our documents, and Ken was in the OR from the time that you landed to the OR in under 3 hours. I can't go to an urgent center and get an EKG and a chest x-ray in 3 hours. So really quite remarkable that the stars somewhat aligned, and everybody was on their A game, and we were able to get Ken over here to have his surgery. His surgery was a long one. It was, I think, just around 9 hours. For me and the OR team, this is what we're used to. So, I said that they come in threes, and we did have our second one a few days after I made that comment, and that patient, thankfully, is doing really well as well. So just a great story at a time where I think we need great stories, right? And a testament to everybody here at the hospital, at both hospitals, at the airport, and of course your buddies on the plane that got you here safely, so that we could fix your aorta. That's really what I have to say. I think, it's just an amazing story, and it's definitely not one that can be replicated, which I hope we never have to replicate. Just a real feel-good story. And I made this comment earlier as well, but sometimes in medicine we feel like bad things are happening to good people, and when bad things do happen to good people, we always make that comment, oh, he or she was such a wonderful person, it's such a shame. And this time a good guy got what he deserves, right? He got a great operation. He got great care by our ICU staff. He had great friends and colleagues to land the plane, and the good guy won. So,
Okay, well, that was amazing, right? So I really thank you so much for each of you sharing your story with all of us, and it is a true miracle. So what we'd like to do now is open it up for questions, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask each individual to come back up to the podium so that you can direct your questions to that specific person on our panel today. So we're going to start again with Mr. Allen, if you would come to the podium, and we just ask if you all could repeat the question and then respond. Okay? Thank you.
Did you ask if I fly professionally?
Correct.
Yes.
How long have you been flying professionally?
Since 2016, but I've been a pilot since 1988. But I got all my commercial license and instructor certificates back in 16 up through the last couple years. So I teach seaplane instruction at a world famous school up in Winter Haven, Jack Brown Seaplane Base. I do some skydive flying at my local airport, and then I do contract flying for people that just need a pilot. I've done ferry flights, and for example, taking airplanes from Miami, let's say, to Guyana, South America. I've done that from Fort Pierce to the Cayman Islands. I'm supposed to be on a trip in a couple of days taking a plane to Qatar, so that's not going to happen. So, darn. I was looking forward to that trip. So I just kind of keep my hand in flying and do what I can when I can. The plane that we were flying is a friend of mine, who bought this plane who's not qualified for it. So he just hired me to fly it. Take him and his family to the Bahamas, which is what I did Thursday morning.
Mr. Allen, how soon until you're back up in the air flying?
Not soon enough for me. But one thing about the FAA, you never actually lose your license. You lose your medical. And if you don't have a current medical, then you're not able to exercise the privileges of flying. So I've got a process to go through. First of all, I got to get healed up, and then go through some processes to try to regain my medical. So I'm hoping that's going to be obtainable, but it's the FAA. I don't know.
What was the first thing you said to Darren when you talked to him?
The first thing I said to Darren when I talked to him, I'm sorry for putting you your life at danger. And I told Russ the same thing, because I've got some guilt for that.
What was the first thing that you said to Mr. Morgan?
Well, I just met him today, so I said thank you. I'm going to talk to him some more when we get through here, and I want to go visit the tower and some other stuff. So, I mean, I just meeting people for the first time.
How does it feel to truly be part of the happiest story of the year?
It's kind of surreal because you see stories on the TV and it makes you feel good, and you don't think you're going to be the one in the middle of it. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to tell my story, and I think it's a good story. But I'm just the small part. Russ, and Darren, and Robert is the real story. I mean, if I'd have just done my job and stayed conscious and landed in Fort Pierce, everything would have been cool.
Mr. Allen, how was it again that Darren, Mr. Harrison, came to be on your plane coming back? We understand that you're longtime friends with Mr. Frank, and he was along for the ride. Did Mr. Harrison charter your plane coming back from the Bahamas? Is that
No, there was no charter. It's he's friends of the owner of the airplane, who has takes his boat over to the Bahamas and does fishing tournaments. So last Thursday, I took the owner, his wife, his daughter, his dog, a couple of friends, including Darren, took him to Marsh Harbor and just dropped him off. Came back, flew by myself all the way back, and then I asked Russ, hey, I'm going to the Bahamas again to pick up a guy, take another guy over there and pick him up. You want to ride with me?
Yeah.
So probably wouldn't answer that same question today. So it was just going back over to take another friend of Phillips to go fishing with him, and then pick up Darren because he had some business to attend to. And tomorrow I was supposed to take Darren to the Bahamas, to Nassau, for him and his wife's sort of honeymoon. So he's got to find another ride.
What is the first thing that you really remember? Because you said you didn't remember, but when you came to, what was the first?
The first thing I remember is thinking somebody was going to throw me out of the plane. And it was these guys pulling me out of the plane after we had landed. I didn't know we had landed. I didn't know anything. And all I remember is hanging onto the door strut and somebody saying, we've landed, we just got to get you out of the plane, let go, let go. And it was these guys pulling me out. So that's the first thing I remember. And then I remember a lot from then on. Remember the ambulance ride to the hospital? Remember her charming face right in my face telling me that it's not as good as it's supposed to be? The ambulance ride down here, and then meeting Dr. Patel. So.
What type of things did you tell your wife when you had the ability to FaceTime at St. Mary's? What were you talking about?
Well, I honestly don't recall that. Stoner, do you remember, other than just, you asked me if I looked tired or I felt tired, and I said, yeah, I feel kind of tired. And obviously I loved her, and I'd see her soon.
You didn't think you were saying your goodbyes at that point, it sounds like.
Well, I knew what an aneurysm was, but I didn't. I mean, I've already survived apparently the worst part of it, in my mind, right or wrong. So no, I didn't think that would be the last time.
When did you realize that this was truly a miracle on every aspect of it?
It still kind of seems surreal. I keep hearing all the word miracle, but you know, I know God definitely worked His magic to get us to this point right here. So, I mean, I don't feel like a miracle, but I guess maybe I am. So.
Mr. Allen, is there anything that was going through your mind that if you didn't make it, you know, what did you want to do? Or if you did make it, what would you want to do after?
Well, I don't recall anything that's going through my mind other than after surgery I wanted to get out of the hospital. You know, and so I think I asked you, when can I go home, which I knew I wasn't ready, but I still have to ask. I don't sit very well, but this has put me in my place. So.
Okay, so Mr. Allen, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
What exactly?
No, the question is, was I back in the passenger seat? No, I fly as Ken's co-pilot. I don't know anything about flying, but that's where I like to sit. So I like to know what's going on, and it's interesting, very interesting. So I remained in that seat the entire time, in the co-pilot seat.
And were you also communicating with Robert and the other aircraft?
I could hear him. We had an issue with the headphones. Ken had pulled the wires out when he slumped one way or the other, and evidently Darren had asked me for my headset. Well, when you have a headset on, it's noise canceling, so I wouldn't have heard him. And I didn't know he did that. Evidently, he came up with another set and got those on, and we fixed him up, and he showed me the plug, and I found where the receptacle was, and I plugged it in. And he had the mic up on top of his head, and I moved it down to his mouth. I showed him where the push-to-talk button was, and then it was his show. I mean, he had such a calm, collected, and there are a lot of things going through your head at the time. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this young guy has some gaming experience or flight simulator, you know. But I had to make a hard decision because I've flown with Ken a lot in his Piper Cherokee, which is totally different. But I had to make a hard decision that Darren was going to be our best chance, and I'm glad I made that decision.
2 questions, sir. How old are you and where are you from?
I'm 69, and I live about 10 minutes from my buddy, Lake Wales.
And another question for you. Obviously, you knew Mr. Allen, and you're focused on survival, but did you ever have any thoughts about what was going to happen to your friend? Can you walk us through that, or were you?
Yes. Darren was so quick to get up there and figured that he had to get Ken out of the pilot seat. He's a big guy, and he didn't have, as far as I could tell, much problem getting Ken to the back. Ken was, he was still moving, and he was breathing, and I knew he was still alive, and when he laid down, his feet were by my hand, and I just kept tapping his feet. I don't know why. I just wanted to make sure he was still with us. So, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
When was the moment that you realized what had really happened? When you had all of this landed, what were your feelings?
It changed as we got closer to landing. A lot of apprehension at first, and you're actually thinking, you know, what are my odds here? And you're thinking, not too good. But as we flew, and I just learned this from Darren's interviews that he was actually practicing on the way in. He was getting the feel for the plane. Crazy. And as we got closer, we could see the coast. We were headed south, and then we headed west and towards the coast. And I could see the Boca Airport, which was small. When I was talking to Rob this morning, he asked me if I saw that airport, and I did. And then Rob, I think, asked us to go to take a slow turn to the north because he wanted us at Palm Beach. So my anxiety level starts to go down as I get confidence in Darren flying the plane, and I see how big the runway was. At that point, I thought, well, we got a decent chance. So we were too high when we passed over the airport. It was out my right window, and I could see the runway. We did a loop. As we're looping, we're descending, and because we were too high, and we went out west and then came back towards the east. And it seems absurd to say this, but it felt like a normal landing. I mean, really, it was. And
I thought it was pretty good video I saw.
So we came in fast, and that was because we had an issue with the flaps. We couldn't get them to work, or we didn't know what we were doing. So, like I said, my anxiety level was, and I remember putting my hand on Darren's shoulder and kind of, I don't know whether I said, we got this, or you got this, or we're going to be okay. And we were. And we did come in fast, but that's a sturdy plane. So we didn't have an issue with it. And he's hitting the brakes pretty hard. So
there wasn't really a lot of dialogue with Darren. Darren was talking to Robert. So
it's all in my head, too. I didn't talk. Darren did all the talking to Rob.
You didn't talk to Darren at all?
Yeah, I could talk to Darren.
Yeah.
So the communication was between me and Darren and Rob.
Right. What were you saying to Darren mostly? We got this, what other kind of things?
I said some of those things. I remember telling him, and I probably didn't have to tell him, that everything you do needs to be done gradual. You know, come down gradually, turn gradually, slowly. And like I said, I think he knew all that. I remember talking about speed as we got closer to the airport, that we were coming in a little fast. So he, in his interview, he told me to dump the throttle once we got, I don't know, I think I did. I don't know. I was listening to him. So we did come in just a little bit fast, but he hit the brakes pretty good. So then he had the wherewithal to ask him if he wanted them to move the plane out of the runway. And I'm thinking, no, just shut the plane off and let's get off.
So. What was the first thing that you guys talked about, or that you said to him?
I got to talk to him before the operation. And like he said he was sorry. I said, don't go there. I said, we got this far. Now all you have to do is get better. And that's what I told him.
When did the radio come into play? I think Alan mentioned something about a radio, remote control radio, that Robert was talking to him on. When did that come into play?
I can't speak to that. I don't know what.
Was there like a radio?
I can answer that.
Any other questions for Mr. Frank?
I have one more question. What is your relationship with flying going to be like? Are you going to get back on these small planes? Do you want to become an autopilot? I mean,
the question is, when will I fly again? Stana flew down here from Lake Wales and said, this guy will take you back to Lake Wales if you want to fly back with him. I said, not today, Stana. Not today. Yeah, I'll fly commercially. I don't know whether it will bring back anxiety or not. That time will tell.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Appreciate your time.
Do you want me to start with the question first? Okay. So the emergency radio is something that we have in our facility. They're commonly above us in our radar room. So when I was paged to come to the radar room to help, basically they were on the frequency of Fort Pierce Tower. So it's kind of like just a push-to-talk radio. So they were already on that frequency And when Fort Pierce Tower lost radio communications with Darren, we were able to reach them on that same frequency as they flew closer to Boca Raton. So my supervisor was able to make contact with Darren, and then when I was paged in the room, that radio was already ready to go. But it's something that we usually keep off, and we turn on only in emergency. And the only reason we had to use that is because they didn't know how to change the radio frequency to the frequencies we would normally use.
At some point, Robert, you were talking to Darren about, do you have a cell phone? Do you have a cell phone? And numbers were being relayed. What was going on then?
So a lot of my audio is reference of talking about cell phones and here's a number, all that kind of stuff. None of my audio, to the best of my knowledge, has been released to the media because it's not there unless somebody somehow recorded it, because it was done on this emergency radio. That audio that you're hearing is from Chip Flores from the Fort Pierce Tower. So he was the one that initially made contact, or that Darren reached out to, hey, you guys hear me? I got a problem. That was Chip Flores. And they tried to, since he couldn't change the radio frequencies and all that stuff, they said, well, all right, somebody had read it. Let's give them a phone number that can call us on their cell phone. Well, I talked to Chip, and he says that as they were giving out that cell phone, that they were losing radio coverage, so that they never heard them. Either Fort Pierce Tower couldn't hear them, or you guys couldn't hear Fort Pierce Tower. So that's when my facility kind of just, all right, we got to go to this frequency. We see them on radar, and then they page me into the room. But all that talking that you're hearing with ATC for the most part is from Fort Pierce Tower.
Just a desperate attempt to somehow stay in contact with them.
Yeah, because they had no idea where the plane was. They just knew that somebody was calling them and trying to figure out the whole situation. Because Fort Pierce Tower just looks at like a 5-mile radius, and my facility, Palm Beach Approach Control Tower, we look at like a 90 miles north and south, and about 60-mile radius within the Palm Beach County area.
Mr. Morgan, did you ever train someone to land a plane from not in the plane?
No. So I've never trained someone to land a plane, never being inside a plane. So the closest I would have to that would just always be in the plane. I'm a flight instructor also, only for a couple of years and very limited because I do it part-time. So I've taken up my kids and kind of walked them through just basic lessons, and I've taken up students who maybe aren't private pilots yet, they're just student pilots and they're still learning how to land, and I can talk them down. So just that little bit of training and practicing becoming an instructor, you kind of have to kind of learn how to, basically, you know how to land a plane, but now you have to teach somebody how to do it. So just by going through that with students and just practicing becoming an instructor, that kind of helped me help Darren and Russ land the plane.
When the plane landed at PBIA, what was your first reaction?
So when the plane landed at PBIA, so I could never see the plane, out the window because our radar room is just all dark, no windows, nothing. We do have people in the tower that were watching the whole thing, but they couldn't get on the same frequency to assist. So I lost the plane around 300 feet on our radar, but your heart kind of sinks because I don't know if they're still there. I don't know if they crashed. So I reach out to Darren. I say, hey, are you still there? He's like, I'm still here. I said, okay. And I just reminded him, what the runway's going to look like as he gets closer and what to do with the power and start to pull back. And then about 5 or 10 seconds go by and he says, I'm on the runway. How do I stop this thing? So just, I just look, he's like, he made it. I look at and I was like, he made it. Just kind of like I think it was adrenaline, but it's just like a wave of emotion, and just kind of a weight comes off your shoulders because you feel like, you're called to that room, that you're the only one they can count on, and if you fail, that's going to be bad. It's going to, I don't want that on me either, so I'm trying to do the best thing I can to help them. But it was just a great feeling to help them and kind of like wake me up from this dream. It can't be real, that type of feeling. And everybody's just like yelling in the room, you're the hero, you did it. And they're just coming right and shaking you. But it just a lot of emotion. I didn't cry, but like before, you kind of get tears in, to your eyes. But it feels really good, and still can't believe that we pulled it off. And you didn't crash, you didn't even damage the plane, as far as I could tell. And a couple of days later, I went up to the plane to make friends with it. I hugged it and took some pictures with it.
First time seeing Mr. Allen today?
Today's the first time, other than the picture that I think the media released.
When you first started talking to Darren, did you operate under the presumption that he knew how to operate the flight controls and where the instruments were, like the airspeed that was on the left side, altimeter on the right side?
So when I first started talking to Darren, I was just briefed that he was a passenger. There was 2 passengers flying a plane, and the pilot was unconscious. So I had no idea of what his experience or background was with flying. So I just treated it like he's a passenger. But I knew up to this point, like, all right, well, I don't know what happened previously. I was just paging the room, but he has control of the aircraft. So I knew he could do like straight and level. And I was told, hey, he's descending from 5,000 to 3,000, and he was actually descending. So now my biggest worry is airplanes are normally stable in their pitch, but not so much in their turning. So I was just like, all right, I don't want to give him any sharp turns, or just turn real shallow. And as he started taking my instructions, and he was able to listen to me and fly the plane, I got more confident. And I started to think to myself, like, hey, we can really pull this off. So I knew I had a bad feeling if I was going to bring him to Boca Raton, just because of it's a very congested area and a smaller runway. I just had a better feeling, hey, we're going to change the plan. We're going to bring you north to Palm Beach. So as it went along, and I talked to them about 20 minutes is what my segment was with them, I had more confidence that we could actually do it as long as I lined them up with the runway that's over almost 2 miles long, the runway is.
So he was able to read the altimeter, for example?
He told me that he could only read his altimeter, and then eventually I came back to him and I said, you don't have airspeed? He said no, and then I heard the passenger in the background, which is Russ, and back and forth with them a little bit, and they said, yes, I guess we do have airspeed. So I said, well, don't worry about it. I can see your altitude, I can see your airspeed, which is ground speed, just a little bit different. And then I can see your track of your aircraft. I can't tell exactly what way they're heading, but I can see the track, which means I could tell if they're turning or not. So I could see his general direction that he was moving.
And just to be clear, the whole time you're communicating with them, this was through that emergency radio?
Yeah, it's called a PET 2000. It's like an orange radio, and you have to manually push the frequencies in. Whereas our normal radios, our frequencies are already right there. They're selected. And I had to have my headset on, and I have a push-to-talk, or we can use our foot to operate on the frequency when we want to talk. So the whole time I'm using this push-to-talk radio, which is an emergency radio, and then the speaker is way above my head. And there's a lot of noise that comes in from other facilities calling us, because we work with adjacent facilities like Miami Approach Control, Miami Center. So I'm hearing a lot of this noise. I'm just trying to block it out. I'm just kind of zoned in, and there's my supervisors were, on my shoulder, just, what do you need? Just let us know, and, I'm just kind of like really focused, but everything was coming out above me, probably like a good 4 feet above me, but enough to where I could keep, good communication with Darren. I just kept talking to him the whole time, because I feel like that at least keep him calm, like letting him know that, hey, someone's here for you. Just always keep talking to him, just making sure everything's okay.
When did this sink in for you? What had really happened?
Probably, well, it sunk in really quick when they got me in the room and told me the situation like we had spoke with before. So just like, well, kind of like, why was I selected for this? Just in my brain, like, oh no, but I guess I got to step up to the plate and make it happen. But when it was over, I was like, I had texted my wife. I went for a walk out in the parking lot, and I just said, that's probably when it sank in, when I texted her, and I just said, hey, I think I just pulled off the impossible. She texted back, what do you mean? I said, well, I think I just saved someone's life. And I didn't know, well, I guess I knew there was 3 people on the plane, but I said, I just saved some people's lives. And then ever since then, it kind of sunk in. And I never thought like it'd be such a big thing, and it just really kind of exploded, became like a big story.
Any other questions for Mr. Morgan? Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Any questions?
Good job.
Teamwork.
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 Can you be more precise about the medical situation as far as was it a dissection or was it a rupture? What type of dissection was that?
Well, I know that Dr. Patel has spoken on this before, but it was a type A aortic dissection, which is a tear of the layers of the aorta. So he, you know, yeah, it was almost the entire aorta.
I have a question. He arrived at the hospital and it looked like he had a stroke. What is the difference in process between admitting someone who appears to have had a stroke and figuring out that this is something deeper than that? Can you just is a CT scan normal? Does a CT scan usually go that low?
Sure. So the question was about differentiating a stroke from a aortic dissection and how, I guess, we would diagnose that in the management. So what's good about the stroke protocol is that we do a plain CAT scan of the brain, which does not use IV contrast, and then after, basically looking for like acute hemorrhage or bleeding in the brain, which would then change the management. And then we proceed with a CAT scan of the head and the neck with IV contrast. And that illuminates the blood vessels of the head and the neck, and that's where we're able to see if there's a dissection that's extending upward as well, and that's how we were able to see it.
There are no physicians at St. Mary's that do this type of surgery, is that correct? You had to transfer in here?
Right, so Dr. Patel was our cardiovascular surgeon on call. So St. Mary's is a level 1 trauma and comprehensive stroke center, and all of our, heart attacks, STEMIs, and heart surgeries, we refer to Palm Beach Gardens.
Any other questions for Dr. G, since I record him? Okay, thank you.
I'm reminded my children like video games, and I remember as a kid playing Flight Simulator, and you just press restart when you don't like how things are going, and it's just crazy that how this turned out. I mean, I'm glad it was you guys and not me, because I don't know if I'm good at what I do. I don't think I could handle what you guys were able to perform up there. Really, a miracle. Happy to take questions.
What are the chances of survival for someone who has experienced something like this aneurysm, this tear in the aorta?
So the question's about survival and prognosis with a type A dissection. So to clarify the earlier question, it was a type A aortic dissection. So the tear began in the beginning parts of his aorta as it exits out of the heart. It progressed across the aortic arch, which gives rise to the vessels that go to the brain. That's why Ken was having stroke-like symptoms, because there was an absence or a severely diminished blood flow to the brain as the tear occurred. So most patients won't make it to the hospital, because what will happen is that tear as a dissection is partial thickness through the first and middle layer of the aortic wall. And what will happen is that tear will then extend throughout the entire thickness of the aorta and lead to what we call a rupture. There are patients that can get to us with what we call a contained rupture. They have ruptured, but it's not a frank rupture. It's kind of encapsulated around the space around the heart. So most patients with this diagnosis, unfortunately, won't make it to the hospital. And every hour that you have a type A dissection, there's a 1 to 3% increased risk of passing away. And the overwhelming majority of patients will pass away without any surgical treatment, prompt surgical treatment. The prognosis with surgery has really improved quite dramatically, and this is all thanks to my predecessors, the folks that trained me and the folks that trained them, to develop techniques and a plan of action to tackle these very difficult, complex conditions and minimize the risk. But of course, the risk is still high. If anybody comes in for routine bypass surgery, which we call, bread and butter or conventional heart surgery, the average mortality rate or passing away within 30 days is around 1.5% to 2%. So it's an incredibly safe procedure for routine bypass. These operations, historically, the mortality rate with surgery, would be in excess of 50%. And depending on what the patient came in with, it could be a lot worse. But we've gotten that number down, which we can verify with international registries, anywhere around 15 to 30%. So it's still at least a tenfold, increased risk compared to conventional surgery. And of course, a lot of it depends on what the patient comes in with. So advanced age, if there's a rupture, if they come in with what we call malperfusion, so the tear, because all of the blood flow isn't going in the normal lumen of the aorta and some of it is going through the tear, some of the vessels that are supplying your other organs, your brain, your kidneys, your liver, can have either an absence of blood flow or severely diminished blood flow, and malperfusion really portends a much higher risk for the case. Long term, I told Ken, the part that we fixed, the life-threatening part, that should be a cure for him. The rest of the aorta will be managed with medical treatment, so blood pressure control, and then with the assistance of an excellent primary care physician and cardiologist, he'll go through routine monitoring of the rest of the aorta for the rest of his life.
How long is recovery?
So these kinds of cases, there's really no ballpark what we say with recovery. When we talk to families and patients when they come in with this problem, we're going to try to get you through the operation, and then we're just going to take it one day at a time and handle each issue as it comes up. And so, we don't really tell patients that, you're going to be in the hospital 6 days. He was in the hospital 6 days, which was really a testament to his overall health and conditioning. And then long-term, really, once he's discharged, it's just, giving him the time to allow the wounds and the sternum to heal. So we had our office visit today, and everything looks like it's healing really well. His sternum feels nice and stable. So he's walking, he's doing some light exercise, and I've told him to gradually increase that. And usually around 6 to 8 weeks, the patients can get back to full activity.
Mr. Allen reported seeing some blue specks in his vision before he lost consciousness. Of the patients that you've been able to talk to who have aortic dissections, have you ever heard something like that before, and why might something like that happen?
That sounds like that's typical of malperfusion to the brain, right? So as the tear extends across the aortic arch, which is giving rise to the vessels that go up to the arms and to the brain, if there's any compromise in blood flow, patients will exhibit stroke-like symptoms, which prompted our great EMS team here to get the patient to St. Mary's. Malperfusion to the brain is really a challenge. Those patients, we have very difficult conversations with the patients and their families because we don't know what that's going to look like after surgery. Patients can wake up, unfortunately, and have a completely devastating neurological injury or hemorrhage. The procedure itself requires massive amounts of blood thinners to enable us to put him on the heart-lung machine. So, make sure they don't have bleeding in the brain. There are techniques we use in the operating room to ensure that the patient's getting adequate blood flow to the brain. But for Ken's case, there was a period where we had to minimize the blood flow because we had to work on his arch. And so that was why we had to cool him down to around 18 to 20 degrees and do all that fancy stuff.
Was there any sign that he's had any sort of damage to his brain? Sorry for asking.
No, I mean, he's pretty sharp. He's pretty sharp.
Don't ask my kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Dr. Patel, thank you for your talent. My last question really is back, if you don't mind. How do you feel? We'd like to ask you how you feel.
I feel pretty good, actually. I get tired later on in the day, depending on what I'm doing, but every day, just feeling better. sleeping, you can't say too much about that, because if you don't get any sleep, you feel like crap. So finally my chest is such where I can turn without really hurting, really hurting. So getting some good quality sleep has made all the difference in the world in the last 4 or 5 days. So I feel like I'm on the mend.
When do you think you'll be able to go back home?
I went home I got discharged Monday. I went to my sister Tisa's house, who lives right down the street. So I spent the night there, and then we left and went home last Tuesday. Came back yesterday. So probably go back home either later today or tomorrow. Thank you.
Did anybody have any other questions for Dr. Patel? Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank all of you for being here and all the, wow, your story, it's amazing to me to hear what you went through. And, you know, we get up every morning, we do our routine, we go to work, right? Who knew all this was going to go on, right? But I'm very thankful for everybody that's been here today and for all of you for being here to hear this wonderful story. And so that concludes our press conference for today. And we would like for all of you all to stay for a moment. We'd like to get a group picture if that's okay. Okay? Thank you so much. You want us up here? You guys want to? Okay, yeah. You guys want to come up here?
We spent the night the first I knew his head.
Yeah, right.
I remember you telling me he's pre-op. He was talking. Yeah, that's what it was.